information. Next, they'll do the records review. This involves sitting down, going through your pile of records. If they're in order, it makes it much quicker for the inspector to go through and document that you have everything you're supposed to have. It makes it go faster, it frees up your time. When they go through that, what they're looking at is that you have the proper documents and they note the dates, the testing and monitoring were done. All of this goes into their inspection report. They will also make sure that you have a current placard posted. They will make sure that you have your RDRL in writing. And lastly, they'll verify that you have the proper financial responsibility. The financial responsibility is an issue that's come up recently in some of the out-of-service tanks. Typically, if you have a tank that's out of service, you are not required to have financial responsibility. However, we have gotten guidance from DEP. What we're finding is there are some out-of-service tanks that still contain a small amount of petroleum product. Now, Marshall talked about earlier the definition of an empty tank. It doesn't have to be bone dry. But if it is a petroleum product, there's any product left in that tank, you are still required to have financial responsibility on that tank. We've had probably about 3 sites in the last couple months that have come up with that as an issue. Now, what if the inspector finds violations while they're out there? First off, there'll be no surprises. You'll be told as you go along with the inspection, if there's a violation, they'll point it out. If there's something that's possibly a violation, they're just not sure, they need to do some research on it, they will let you know that too, and then get back with you on that. They will also take photos of any violations that are physical. They will take this information, many of them do their inspection report right there on site in their tough books, have you sign it before they even leave and give you a copy. Otherwise, they'll take it back, do it, and provide you with a copy. Once this report's done, it's entered into the state's database. Then you will receive, within 10 days, a non-compliance letter for the violations that were cited. The letter will state all the violations that are cited and the corrective actions that you need to take to resolve these violations. They'll also give you your timeline. Depending on the violation, you'll have anywhere from 90 to 180 days to correct it. If it's what's considered a significant violation, which would be, say, no proof of financial liability, you'd have 90 days. If it's a minor violation, such as you don't have 2 years of your paperwork, you'd have 180 days. If after the 45-day or 90-day period, depending on which type of violation you have, it has not been resolved, you'll receive a second non-compliance letter. Once you have resolved the violations, you need to provide documents to the county to let us know that you have resolved it. Depending on the violation, you may be re-inspected. Say if it's a spill bucket that was cracked that needed to be replaced, the inspector should come out, do a re-inspection, and make sure the repairs were done properly. If it's something like paperwork that you just didn't have it documented, you would just need to provide proof to us that you now are documenting it, and that will close out the violation. Now, once the violations are resolved, we close it out in the database, and that's the end of it. You won't see us again for another year, or, as Marshall said, in this case, it may be 2 years, depending on the cycle you get on. What if you don't resolve your violations? Well, at the end of the 90 or 180 days, if they are not resolved, they are referred to DEP for enforcement action. Now, to give you a little rundown of what the program has done this year, this is as of last week. We did 863 annual site inspections, 50 closures, 5 complaints, 9 discharges, 6 re-inspections, and 74 installations. Now, out of those 863 annual site inspections, only 145 were cited for 1 or more violations. Of those 145 facilities, that amounted to 268 individual violations. And again, of those 145 facilities, only 6 of them were referred to DEP. We were able to work with the majority of the facilities on a county level to get the violations resolved without referring to enforcement.
Is this the Duval County numbers?
Duval County, yeah. And one thing I should have clarified at the beginning, I may use the term county and city. If you're familiar with Jacksonville and Duval County, they're really one and the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, every year Tom gives you the top 5 violations of the year. This year's no different, except I'm not as animated as Tom. Number 5, we had 13 facilities that did not have adequate markings on their fill or spill box lids. This was number 3 last year with 33 facilities. So we do see an improvement in that area. Number 4, again, we had 13 facilities that did not submit their tank closure or limited closure reports within the 60-day time period. This also included facilities that did send them in on time, but they were missing all of the proper documentation. This was number 2 last year with 42 facilities. So again, there's a great improvement in this area. It also could be that there's less closure activity, I don't know. Number 3, we have 15 facilities that did not pay their annual registration fee by September 15th. This is the fee that's due July 1st. It's considered late after July 30th. Last year, this was top with 78. The drop in this may have something to do with, as Marshall was talking about earlier, I believe Marshall or maybe David, the program now where the transporter is responsible if they give product to an unregistered tank. This may have something to do with that, because that's a drastic drop in those numbers. Number 2, we had 21 facilities that did not have proper financial responsibility. This one was not even in the top 10 last year. There are a few of these account for these out-of-service tanks that I mentioned earlier, but I believe the majority of these are documentation. The facility does not provide the proper documentation. When we finally do get it, we do see that the policy was in place at the time of the inspection. They just didn't provide the documentation prior to being cited for the violation. And the number 1, we had 63 facilities that did not do their release detection. This was number 5 last year with only 15. So there's a great increase in this. This, again, part of it, I know, is paperwork. Not providing the paperwork at the time of the inspection or within the 5 days so that they get the violation cited. This is all the importance of having your paperwork at the time of the inspection, or at least within the 5 days that you're required to have it so that you don't get cited.
This is the interstice leak detector.
Right, leak detectors and interstice. Right. Now, on your upgrade update, last year when Tom gave this, he said it was probably the last year that you would ever hear it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We do still have single-wall underground tanks that are out there. Throughout the state, there's 2,080. Last year, there were 3,197. So that's cut drastically. In the Northeast District alone, 194, currently 287 last year. And in Duval County, we still have 19 facilities with 64 tanks. There were 78 tanks last year. And of those last year, 22 were abandoned. This year, it's only 12. So there are making progress getting these tanks out. We have some are out of service. We actually have some that are still in service that DEP is working with the facilities. I would like to say that this is the last year that you'll get the update, but based on this trend, we've got at least another year, maybe 2, maybe 3. So we will probably be hearing about this again. And with that, I'll ask if anyone has any questions.
I was wondering, the Department of Agriculture used to come out and they come out quarterly or whatever and do their inspections, and they inspect hoses and nozzles and things like that. Is Duval County inspectors also doing